Well, we're still unpacking the UDM manifesto launch here on SABC News on The Full View. And of course, we're chatting to Sibungalwa as well as Professor Jolene Kotsia, who's joining us from Port Elizabeth. Sibungalwa joins us from East London. Thank you very much for staying with us, both of you. I want to come to you, Prof, on the issue of crime. It's one of the, key issues that we expect many of these manifestos to touch on. It speaks to the heart of the fears of South Africans. What would, I guess, political parties need to say to try and convince South Africans on the ticket of ensuring a safer South Africa, they are the best person where you'll put your mark on the ballot?
No, definitely. I mean, I think, crime is an issue that is definitely on the minds of most South Africans. So obviously it will be an issue that political parties capitalize on. And coupled with that, a second issue would, of course, be around job creation. And there is this perception out there that, a political party can create jobs, but we need to look kind of at the environment in which the environment that the political parties want to create in terms of job creation, which some argue will then reduce the number of criminal activity that we have. I am not entirely convinced of that argument. I do think we need to look at issues around what we.
Well, we do apologize for that. We'll try to connect to Professor Jolene Kotsia again just very shortly. Spoo, on that, of course, we're speaking about the issues of crime before we went to the professor. The issues of crime certainly would need to be addressed. I think we're going to hear that in other election manifestos that will come as well. So what would these political parties, in addition, need to say to South Africans, to perhaps try and sway them on that ticket of trying to create a safer South Africa?
I think, Griselda, the reality is that there are common features in all these manifestos, because all these parties understand that in terms of social issues, crime is the big issue, the issue of poverty, the issue of unemployment. So obviously, if you're to talk on crime, there have to be specifics, which unfortunately I do not think that anyone has been able to come up with specifics. All the parties always talk about visible policing and ensuring that you strengthen the law enforcement agencies, but obviously we do know that there are underlying causes of crime, which also all of them have to touch on. So on the space of crime, really the reality is that it's all what the parties promise. Whether they'll be tested or not, we will never know, because not all of them will ever be in government. But obviously it's just a matter of just touching on all those sore points and the pain points for the voters of this country.
Professor, one political party that seemed to have been quite clear on one of the pressing issues in South Africa's violence against women and children, the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa had mentioned that quite prominently. How do you think that will also feature? I mean, we've seen the scourge of violence against women and children in South Africa. We're not seeming to put a lid on it and trying to find, the right dialogue that would deal with the scourge that is facing women and children in this country. So how important would it be for political parties, to try and speak to South Africans on that, whether it be men as well?
No, look, I think the narrative needs to go a bit further than just gender-based violence, or violence against women and children. I think one of the key issues or the key discussions we have to start with is issues around gender empowerment, and almost changing the view that women are in need of development and in need of empowerment to one where women are actually active agents in their own empowerment and in their own development. And this will be especially important for rural communities and rural economic development, considering that very often it is women who are left behind while men do go into the bigger cities to look for work. So that narrative on, women as agents of their own development and their own empowerment does need to change a little bit and move beyond gender-based violence. And I think that is a key issue that political parties are missing when they talk about issues around rural development, township economies, entrepreneurship and so forth.
Spoo, I want to come to the issue of land just before we run out of time also. What I found quite interesting in this election manifesto is that here on the issue of the land economy, what the general says is they want this issue to be dissected. Also, they want to know how will entities such as traditional trusts be impacted. Now you're speaking directly to traditional leadership and the issue of land in a rural province such as the Eastern Cape, would you not think?
Obviously, Griselda, as I said earlier, the manifestos, because these three parties, for instance, the ANC, the UDM and the EFF, they both agree on the issue of land expropriation, expropriation without compensation, but where they differ is on the approach. Obviously, because we have a mass rural base in the Eastern Cape, and also General Bandolo misunderstands that the rural base and also traditional leaders are key to his political fortune. So obviously, that's why you'd ask the questions as to what happens to them. But what I did not see in his manifesto are specifics of how exactly he says the issue of traditional leaders and leaders and land and communal land needs to be dealt with. So obviously, I think the land is the key issue in this particular election year. Already, Parliament is in the process of amending the Constitution, so everyone knows, because this is where their support base lies. That is where they're targeting that is where they are focused. So land, unemployment, job creation will be those focal points for those, particularly those three parties. Obviously, where they differ is on the specifics of how this should be done, because you have the EFF, which says all land should be expropriated. You have the ANC that says yes, land must be expropriated, but it should not disrupt economic activity, and also it should not threaten farmers. And also on the one aspect, you also have the UDM, which raises similar issues.
Professor Kotse, let me get your views on that, on the UDM asking how will entities such as traditional trusts be impacted on the land issue?
That, of course, is one of the bigger questions, and we could also potentially determine whether let's say strongholds for the ANC as well as the UDM within those traditional communities do go out and vote. There is a lot of uncertainty around how communal land ownership is going to be dealt with. Similarly, also that links in with issues of rural development, and it also links in with issues of power dynamics between men and women when it comes to opportunities of exploiting land for their own development and empowerment. So it is going to be interesting to see how that dynamic, especially in provinces like the Eastern Cape, is going to influence, I would say, voter turnout, but also in the event of a higher voter turnout, which political party would then get the vote.
Professor Jolene Steyn-Kotze joining us from our Port Elizabeth studios there, and Spungalwa, who is joining us from East London, both political analysts. Spungalwa, also a media analyst. Thank you very much for joining us on this Saturday evening here on The Full View. Of course, unpacking the UDM election manifesto launch which took place in Port Elizabeth earlier on today. Let's take a short break here on The Full View, but first